So we are just going to delete this script that we just wrote, and we're going to go over to main camera. We'll notice that the script now is saying it's missing. So if we just highlight over that and click remove component, and we are just going to explain exactly how variables work inside of Unity. So let me create an example. So I'm going to create a new script, new C# script. I'm going to call this variables. Let's open that one up. Okay, so we're started with the same template, but this time our class is called variables, and I'm going to show you a few different types of variables. So to start a variable, we say public. We can also say private, but just for simplicity's sake, we're just going to name them all public for this at this stage. Public int whole number. Actually, let's call it something different. Let's call it car speed equals 45. Cool. So an integer is a whole number. Sorry, this keyboard is really hard to type on. And then we've got a different type of variable, a public string. And we're going to call this player name equals Dave. And we got another variable called public bool, and we're going to call this is player in boundary. And we're going to equal that to true. Okay, fantastic. So a string is basically just like, let's just call it text for now. That's probably the best way that you can understand. It's just text. It's just a packet. It's just a container that holds the information Dave. This is just a container that holds the information 45, whole numbers. And this is the information that holds a true or false statement. Okay, so this is probably very confusing, and I totally understand why, but if you've never done programming before. But if you have done a little bit of programming, it should make a little bit of sense. But variables are what we use to store information and manipulate the game world. So for example, if we had a car that was going at 45 and then the car crashed into a wall, well then we could say, this isn't actually code, but let's just say it was code. We could say if car crashed into wall, then we could say car speed equals 0, because the car would then be going at 0 speed. That line of code won't work. Don't use that. That's actually garbage. That doesn't work. But it's implementing a point. So what we do is we ask questions to the computer. Well, how fast is the car going? Well, if the car's going at 45, then we want to move that car object at the speed of 45. Is the car in the boundaries? Is the player in the boundaries? Well, if it is, then if it is, then all good is true. But if it's not, then we need to do something. So a real world example is, say we have a car traveling down a track and the car drives out of bounds. And what we want to do when the car drives out of bounds is just like it happens in Mario Kart, the video game, where when you drive out of bounds, the car gets picked up and put back onto the track. Well, if we wanted to do something like that, it's pretty easy. We could say inside of update, we could say if, this is what an if statement is. So it's asking the computer if is player in bounds equals, two equals signs asks the question of equals. If car is in bounds equals false, open up curly braces, close curly braces. Then we want to say, then we can say something like, move player back to track. And that's it. So that would mean that as soon as this is ticked to false, the player would get moved from wherever they are out of bounds back to somewhere that we put on a track. So if you look at these variables here, we have a float, a string, and a bool. A float is like an integer, but they're like decimal place numbers. So an integer can't do decimal places, but a float can. So you can have like 4.2, 45.6. So they're a lot better for doing things like car speed. A string is the car name. It's just Red Boy, which will be the title of the car. And a bool is like the bool that we were talking about in our script, is car in bounds. Is car in bounds is equal to true. This car name is equal to Red Boy, and the car speed is equal to 45. Let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see here in this example, we have a car traveling up the highway. The car is going at the speed of 45. Its name is Red Boy, and it's inside the bounds, so everything is working fine. So in that situation, we have used 45, the variable, car speed, to determine how fast the car can actually travel. We're saying, hey, the car speed is 45, therefore make the car travel at the speed of 45. Pretty simple, right? But how do variables actually work to affect the gameplay? Well, look at this next example. In this next example, we have the exact same situation. The car is traveling at 45, his name is Red Boy, and is car in bounds equals true. But let's see what happens when the car drives onto the dirt. Watch the float car speed variable. It's 45. Car speed goes down to 20. So as the car's driving along, still driving at only the speed of 20, he's going to drive out of bounds. Look what happens to the bool is car in bounds. It turns false, and also the car speed turns to 0. So what happens then is the game goes, okay, the car is out of bounds, so let's move the car from where it is now back onto the track. And put the car speed back up to 45, and the car can burn around that corner and speed off into the horizon. Everyone is happy. Happy days. So that is just a quick example of how variables are used in a game engine to determine how things work, to determine the logic of how the game works.